Everybody like and subscribe, praise the bell icon. Story number 1.
In 2012, a 27-year-old man named Darren took a job at a warehouse on the outskirts of Chicago. The building had once belonged to a shipping company, but had changed hands several times over the years. By the time Darren got there, the place had a reputation, unspoken but unmistakable. No one said anything outright, but he noticed the way the older workers avoided certain areas and fell into silence when he asked too many questions. The warehouse was huge, 70,000 square feet of endless concrete, stacked crates, and metal shelving. Darren was on the overnight shift, responsible for inventory tracking and moving shipments. He liked the quiet at first, no traffic noise, no phones ringing, just the steady hum of forklifts and distant clanking of metal. But that peace wouldn't last. His first week passed without incident until he was assigned to an isolated back corner of the warehouse known as Bay 6. It was always dimmer there, even though the lights were technically functional. Workers avoided it, claiming the wiring was faulty or that the shelving was unstable. But the structure was solid. What wasn't was the atmosphere. Cold drafts hit you there, even in summer, and every so often you'd swear you were being watched from between the shelves. One night, Darren was scanning barcodes on a pallet when he heard footsteps. Not the echoing heavy kind you'd expect in a warehouse. These were light, almost careful. He thought it might be one of the other night workers, maybe messing with him. He called out, but got no response. The steps stopped. Then, maybe 20 feet away, something whispered his name. Darren. He froze. The voice wasn't familiar. It was female, soft, and disturbingly close. He turned the corner and found nothing but shrink-wrapped pallets and shadows. He laughed it off, telling himself his mind was playing tricks on him. But when he looked back at the scanner, the last scanned item had changed. Instead of a product ID, the screen now displayed a single word, run. He stared at it until the screen blinked out. Management told him it was probably a glitch. Warehouse scanners were known to bug out. Still, Darren started keeping his phone on him, using the flashlight every time he had to go back to Bay 6. One night about 3 weeks in, he decided to record the area, just to prove to himself that there was nothing there. He set his phone on a crate, recording a time lapse as he worked. When he reviewed the footage on break, his stomach turned. In the span of 5 minutes, he saw something emerge from behind one of the shelves. It wasn't fully visible, more like a distortion in the air, like heat waves. But there was a shape to it, a tall, thin figure. It moved silently through the aisles, stopping right behind where Darren had been working. It stood still for a long time, almost watching him. Then it simply melted back into the shadows. He showed the footage to a coworker, a guy named Elias who'd been there for over a decade. Elias turned pale, said nothing, and walked off. The next day, he didn't show up. Word came down later that he'd quit without notice. Things escalated after that. The whispering voice became more frequent. It wasn't always calling his name now. Sometimes it was crying, sobbing softly from somewhere between the pallets. Other times, it was laughter, low and broken, echoing far too close. Items began disappearing, then reappearing in places Darren knew he hadn't left them. Once, he found a pallet jack covered in bloody handprints. He reported it, but the cleaning crew arrived to find nothing. Not a single smear. By the 5th week, Darren stopped sleeping properly. He'd dream about being trapped in the warehouse, the lights flickering, something crawling just out of sight. He was on the verge of quitting when he met one of the building's former managers by chance, an older man who was picking up paperwork one night. They spoke briefly. When Darren mentioned Bay 6, the man stiffened. After a long pause, he said, "They found a girl back there years ago. She'd been missing for weeks. No one knew how she got in. Security footage showed nothing. No entry, no exit. Just her, appearing in Bay 6, face down in the corner." Darren didn't come back after that night. He packed up his things and left town completely. He posted the story and the footage anonymously online, what little he had left. The video was corrupted shortly after, just like everything else related to that place. The warehouse is still open, still running overnight shifts. But no one lasts long in Bay 6. They say if you stay too long, you start hearing the crying. And if you ever hear someone whisper your name, no matter how curious you are, don't look behind you.
Story number 2.
In 2019, a 33-year-old man named Caleb got a contract job with a liquidation company in Detroit. The job involved sorting and cataloging inventory left behind in abandoned commercial buildings. Most of the time it was easy work. Old office furniture, rusted machinery, sometimes a stash of unopened supplies. But then they were sent to an old textile warehouse on the edge of the industrial district. The building had been shuttered since the 90s, left to rot in silence. No one had been inside for decades. No lights, no power, just the smell of mildew, rust, and something else Caleb couldn't place. Something organic, like wet hair or old meat. The place was cavernous, concrete floors cracked from frost damage, windows blacked out with grime. As Caleb stepped inside, his flashlight caught movement. Not real movement, but the flicker of shadows reacting oddly to the beam. He shook it off. He was alone inside. His partner, Rudy, was outside dealing with paperwork. The job was simple. Photograph the equipment, tag it, and log it on a tablet. But as Caleb moved deeper into the building, he noticed something strange. The rows of shelves were arranged in a maze-like pattern. Odd, considering this was supposed to be a textile facility. Instead of open rows for carts and forklifts, the shelves created narrow corridors that led nowhere, or sometimes circled back on themselves. It was like someone had rearranged the entire space to trap whoever entered. At one point, he found a doorway almost hidden behind a stack of old crates. It led to a narrow stairwell, descending into the lower levels of the building. Caleb radioed Rudy to let him know he was going to check the basement. Rudy didn't respond. The stairwell was unlit. He stepped slowly, each creak of the metal echoing like gunshots. The air grew colder as he descended. At the bottom, he found another level of shelving, but these shelves didn't hold spools of fabric or machinery. They were lined with personal items, dozens of them. Wallets, shoes, hairbrushes, even old ID cards, some dating back to the early 2000s. Most of the names had been scratched out. One shelf had a child's stuffed rabbit. It was missing one eye. Its fur was matted with something dark and sticky. Then he noticed the walls, faint marks everywhere, scratches, dozens, maybe hundreds of them, finger length. Some had broken fingernails still embedded in the plaster. Caleb backed away, a wave of nausea crashing over him. And that's when he heard the dragging sound. It was distant at first, like something heavy being pulled across the concrete. Then came the breathing, wet, shaky, inhale, exhale, slow, deliberate. It was coming from the far end of the room, just beyond his flashlight's reach. He called out, "Hello, who's there?" But no answer came. Just the dragging. Closer now. He turned and ran up the stairs, heart pounding. But halfway up, he slipped on something wet and hit his shoulder against the wall. He scrambled upright, not daring to look back. As he reached the main floor, he slammed the stairwell door shut and locked it. He ran outside into the daylight, breathless, blood on his arm from the fall. Rudy was standing next to the van, confused. He claimed the radio had never gone off. Caleb told him what he saw. Rudy didn't believe him, but agreed to call the job off for the day. That night, Caleb couldn't sleep. Around 3 a.m., he received a text from an unknown number. No message, just a photo. It was the stuffed rabbit from the basement, lying on the hood of his car. The company pulled out of the contract the next day. No explanation. They sealed the building up again and removed it from their listings. Caleb tried to find out who owned it or who worked there before, but every lead came up dry. He still gets messages sometimes. Photos from inside the building. One showed a figure standing at the bottom of the stairwell, tall and impossibly thin, with arms that reached the floor. No one ever went back in, but someone or something never left.
Story number 3.
In 2007, a woman named Linda took a night shift security job at an old fulfillment warehouse just outside St. Louis. The building had been mostly shut down, with only a skeleton crew overseeing storage before the company permanently closed its doors. Linda's job was simple: patrol the perimeter, check the monitors, and clock hourly reports. She was alone in the building every night from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. The warehouse was huge, 4 stories tall, with hundreds of storage racks and towering walls of boxed-up merchandise that hadn't been moved in years. The company didn't bother heating it anymore. It was always cold. Too cold. The first couple of nights were uneventful, quiet. But on her third night, something shifted. Around 1:30 a.m., she was doing her routine walk through the upper floor when she found a single box sitting in the middle of the aisle. It was open, empty. The packing slip was blank. That shouldn't have been possible. Everything in the facility was cataloged, sealed, and logged. Boxes didn't move on their own. She radioed it into her supervisor, but he told her to just leave it and noted in her report. Maybe a cleaner or a worker left it out during the day shift. Still, it left her uneasy. The following night, she found another open box, this time at the far end of the first floor, near an unused loading dock. Again, it was empty. Again, the packing slip was blank. But this time, there was something else. Long, thin scratches on the concrete floor, leading from the dock toward the box, like something had been dragged. She checked the camera feed, but the footage glitched. Static replaced that entire half-hour span. The error repeated the next night, and the night after that. Each time a new box appeared, the cameras around it would cut to snow during the hour leading up to the discovery. On the seventh night, Linda decided to set a trap. She placed a sealed box in the same aisle where she'd found the first one. She marked it with a red X and positioned a spare motion-activated trail cam just above it. She left it alone and waited. Around 2:14 a.m., the hallway light flickered. Her radio crackled with static, then went dead. When she finally returned to the spot, the box was open, empty again. The camera had fallen to the ground, its casing cracked. She retrieved the memory card and checked the footage in the security office. The video was dark, grainy, but it showed movement, the box shifting slightly. Then slowly something rising out of it. At first it looked like smoke, but then it took shape, a figure, pale, human-like, but wrong. Its head was too long, its limbs too thin, and its face, it had no features, just smooth skin stretched over where eyes and a mouth should have been. The thing crawled out of the box, crouched on all fours like a spider, then twisted its head toward the camera. Not turned, twisted, like its neck didn't follow human rules. Then the feed cut out. Linda didn't finish her shift. She locked herself in the security room and waited for morning. When her supervisor arrived, she showed him the footage, but the file had corrupted. All that was left was a black screen. She quit that same day. 2 weeks later, the warehouse went up in flames. Electrical fault, according to the report. But the fire investigators never released details. A rumor floated around afterward. Someone had broken in days before the fire and tried to seal off the basement level with industrial welding. No one talks about that warehouse now. It's an empty lot. But people in the area say sometimes late at night, they see lights flickering from under the ground. And in the silence, if you're close enough to the fence, you might hear a box sliding across concrete, all by itself.